Welcome to RSA 2021. My name's Scott England with Thycotic Centrify, and today we're going to talk about DevOps, machine identities, and privileged access. I have with me today Dave McNeely.
Hi, I'm David McNeely. I'm Chief Technology Officer at Thycotic Centrify.
Welcome, Dave. Appreciate you taking time with us today.
Thanks.
So, as the world keeps developing and people are going more and more to the cloud, we see more teams switching to DevOps. And with that, what security struggles do you see today with DevOps teams as it relates to our business?
Well, actually, we hear quite a few different challenges that organizations have. First of all, the adoption of automation just means that they have to get used to deploying lots of servers into highly automated environments, which is very different than what they used to do on premises. And that automation, in a lot of cases, drives the creation of scripts that deploy all of that technology. And in a lot of cases, those scripts need to have credentials within them. So there's the challenge of like how to secure those credentials, how to enable the automation without overly exposing the environment.
That brings up a great point. So how are those credentials exploited today? What exploits are happening in the DevOps world?
Sure, I mean, the bad guys are doing the same kinds of things they always have been, which is to look for ways to get into the environment in order to go access things that they're not supposed to, in order to steal access to data. And in many cases, that means they're looking for those service accounts, they're looking for those credentials that are stored inside scripts as a way to gain access to the infrastructure, to be able to create new rogue systems that run their exploit tools in order to go find data that's inside those cloud-based environments.
Excellent. And so here at Thycotic Centrify, we're working every day to make our products better and better. How are we helping those DevOps teams accomplish that and get over those gaps?
Yeah, a lot of things that we've done in the last several releases, things like trying to help customers out with the automation in such a way that there's no need to put credentials inside the scripts, ways to have your automation CI/CD tooling make calls out to our platform to ask for dynamic ephemeral credentials to go do their task. There's other things. We created this new feature for cloud providers in order to go automatically find EC2 instances, for example, on Amazon, and automatically take over the security on those, vaulting away the local accounts and setting them up for privileged access where humans actually need to log into those systems.
So I know humans can do it, and we have this for humans, but what about machine to machine? How do we handle that kind of communication?
Well, there's the more traditional way of handling machine to machine is to give an application or the machine that the application's running on a credential so that it can use that to go log into other things. And what we're trying to enable is the developer to be able to take advantage of ephemeral credentials, tokens that last a very short amount of time, which means they have to come ask for it. Of course, you need to look at how strong can we make the client application asking for that credential that's short-lived in order for the application to work properly. We've done some things to make it easy for the app developer to make API calls to us and ask for those temporary credentials, whether it's agentless technologies or if it's an environment where you have the ability to install the Centrify Client on that system and set up delegated machine credentials.
So delegated machine credentials or machine identities, how does that differ from service accounts?
Well, it's different because the computer itself and the client is going to manage the machine account. In other words, when you spin up a brand new computer, that new computer is going to get an account with the identity provider that Centrify provides in order to manage the communication, authentication back and forth. And instead of exposing that credential to the application, we make it easy for the application to ask for an ephemeral token. And our client will go get the ephemeral token on behalf of the application and hand it back. And therefore, the application doesn't need access to the machine's identity. That's very different from take a service account and go create a service account in a Vault and then take the credential and then hand it back to the application. In that case, the application now has the credential that is going to be as long-lived as the job needs, but it's less managed.
Now, I know a lot of people are still using service accounts to do their applications and to do their automation. Can we handle that as well?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the base level that most people start from, is to use service accounts and let the centralized management system reach out and rotate those credentials and all other applications that depend on that application in such a way that we keep them all in sync. It's just quite a bit more effort if you think about the task at hand for a Vault to be able to do that work, as opposed to the ability to go get a short-lived credential and use it for that duration of time you need it, and then it's no longer good.
Right. So I hear a lot of people talking about native tools, and each cloud provider has their own native tools. How does our solution here at Thycotic Centrify better than the native tools that are provided by AWS and Azure, Google, and other cloud providers such as that?
I think a lot of times it depends on the construction and development of the application and how the application's, what task it's trying to provide. Most organizations start out on one cloud provider, and then they get very familiar with those tools and start to use those particular tools. But as the organization grows, or as in some cases the finance department comes back and tells you we got a better deal on a different cloud provider, then you're faced with, how do I take what I built on this provider and make it work on the other provider? And at that point you realize there's more cloud providers than just one out there. So a lot of organizations get to the point where they decide they need to design their solution in such a way that it works across multiple cloud providers. That gives them flexibility and the freedom to move from one to the other, or to play them against each other to get a better pricing for the costs.
Right. Now, some people are actually using multiple cloud providers for their same application. Heaven forbid someone like an Amazon or Microsoft has an issue, they would be have their application spread across both cloud providers. Can we still play in that environment as well?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, most of our customers try to do that, set up their application in such a way that it can be deployed across multiple cloud providers. We do that ourselves, by the way. We run on both AWS and Azure. There's reasons to have them on both. We sometimes run across customers that have a preference for one versus the other, but in a lot of cases, it's simply a matter of being able to deploy the software on multiple cloud providers, being able to take advantage of the features that each may have, as well as the hosting locations where they have their data centers and their regions set up. Because in all cases, they're very different, and some providers may have more locations in specific countries versus the other provider.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons why people choose to go with multi-cloud providers.
And with that, there's got to be some best practices that are out there, especially when it comes to machine, and with everybody using microservices and Kubernetes. What are some of the best practices that Thycotic Centrify can offer to our customers when they're thinking about how they're going to go about this task?
A lot of the best practices that we set up for human access to resources are very similar when we talk about machine to machine. In other words, make sure that you have a very strong identity. Just like we get an employee badge and there's an official badging process, that's how we get our initial identity. The virtual machines are created with an identity, and that is their strongest identity. They can also be provided an identity, much like us getting a passport. I have to go prove my identity before I get a passport. And that gives me a strong identity that from that point forward I can then use. In order to establish stronger authentication, we ideally want to use that strong mechanism for authentication from one computer to the next, and use short-lived credentials, which is as close as to multi-factor authentication we can get for non-human type access. Right. Very strong identity and machine-to-machine federated style authentication. And then just adhering to the concepts of just-in-time and just enough. And that really just means make sure that the access from a resource to its particular backend that it may need, if it's a client service that needs to access a database, to make sure that is very short-lived and doesn't need to live for beyond the duration of time for that transaction.
So where do you see the future of this going? I mean, you're our Chief Technical Officer here at Thycotic Centrify. How do you see machine-to-machine credentials going forward in the future?
I do see, a lot of the focus is on making sure that there are more types of credentials that are supported between the various systems as they need to authenticate. There's a lot of customers that are moving to microservices architectures, and the need to move to microservices means that you end up with all of these applications, these small portions of the application needing to talk to each other. So in that kind of a federated environment, you end up with potentially thousands to millions of microservices that need to talk to each other. So in that case, we just need to get a lot more granular with respect to the access permissions. and also support the architectures that the customer may have. A lot of customers are moving, like we said earlier, to multi-cloud, but I still hear a lot of customers that have hybrid cloud, which means they end up with some portions of the application running in the cloud environment and some portions that are running within the data center. And in that case, you still need to handle the authentication, from one platform to the other.
Understood. Well, we really appreciate you taking time to talk with us today, Dave. And thank you, everyone, for taking time to listen to us. I hope you got a lot out of this. If you want more information, please visit www.centrify.com and reach out to your salesperson again if you have further questions.